Night drives have a way of blurring the world into something quieter, softer, almost peaceful if you're not paying attention. The hum of the engine settles into your bones, the lines on the road slide past in a steady rhythm, and the darkness around you feels wide enough to swallow every thought you don't want to face. Highways at that hour become long, empty corridors stretching between sleeping towns, where the only company is the soft glow of your dashboard and the faint reflection of your own eyes in the glass. It's easy to forget how alone you really are out there, moving through the silence with miles of unseen space just beyond the reach of your headlights. And sometimes, without warning, the road makes you notice the things that haven't gone to sleep. Most of the people in these stories weren't looking for fear. They were just trying to get home after work, or heading back from a visit, or passing through a stretch of road they driven 100 times without a second thought. They didn't expect to feel watched on an empty highway or to see headlights that stayed too close for too long, or to sense movement in a place where nothing should have been. But the dark has a strange way of revealing what the day hides: small coincidences that don't feel like coincidences, familiar routes that suddenly feel unfamiliar, and the quiet certainty that someone else is out there on the same road, matching your pace. Each of these stories starts with an ordinary drive and ends with a moment they still don't talk about easily. So as you settle into the stillness around you, let the night stretch out across your thoughts the way it did for them. Let the road unfold in your mind, long, dark, and endless, while the hum of these memories settles in beside you. If you've ever felt your chest tighten for no clear reason while driving alone, or glanced into your rearview mirror a little too quickly, you already know how easily the quiet can shift. Stay with me for a while as we move through these 7 true accounts, whispered from the edge of the highway where the darkness seems to lean closer. And tonight, we begin with the first one. I've always preferred driving at night. There's something about the quiet of an empty highway that feels cleaner than the daytime rush. No noise, no crowds, just the steady sound of tires on pavement and the soft glow of the dashboard lighting your face. I used to work late shifts, so driving home near midnight became part of my routine, almost comforting. The highway I took wasn't isolated exactly, but it stretched long between small towns, with long patches of darkness between clusters of streetlights. Most nights it felt peaceful in a way that let me unwind before getting home. But one night, I learned that empty roads can feel different when you're not as alone as you think. It started shortly after I merged onto the main stretch. The road was quiet, the sky clear, and the air cold enough that it sharpened my senses just a little. I had maybe 30 minutes before home, and I remember thinking how nice it was that I hadn't seen another car yet. About 10 minutes in, though, a pair of headlights appeared behind me, distant at first, barely more than a glow on the horizon. I didn't think anything of it. Cars come and go. But after a while, I realized those headlights weren't approaching the way normal cars do. They stayed the exact same distance for miles, neither gaining nor falling back. It was subtle, something you'd only notice if the night was quiet enough for your mind to settle. When I slowed down slightly, I noticed something I didn't expect. The headlights behind me slowed too. Not dramatically, not enough to claim they were tailing me, but enough that I felt a faint tightening in my stomach. I sped back up, and the lights matched my pace with perfect precision. The pattern repeated again and again until the realization settled in: whoever was behind me was packing me deliberately. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe they were distracted or zoning out or just happened to be comfortable going the same speed. But the timing was too exact, the response too immediate. The steering wheel felt colder under my hands as a thin layer of unease settled across my skin. I decided to test it. The highway curved left, and on that stretch there was a passing lane. I drifted slightly toward the center, giving the car behind me an obvious opportunity to pass. Most drivers would take it. The road was wide open, the night was clear, and I wasn't speeding or blocking the lane. But the headlights didn't shift. They stayed locked on the lane directly behind me, neither speeding up nor drifting sideways. It was almost like they wanted to stay there. So I glanced at my mirror again, trying to make out the shape of the car. But the lights were angled in such a way that everything behind them looked like a dark void. No grille or emblem visible. The tension grew every time I looked away and then back again, because each time the lights seemed just a little closer. Not enough to call it tailgating, just enough to make me aware of them in a way I couldn't shake. My shoulders grew stiff, and the quiet comfort I normally felt on this road dissolved into something more restless. The air inside the car felt cooler too, and I found myself breathing a little more shallowly. I kept questioning myself, was I imagining it? Was it really so strange for someone to follow the same speed? But the precision never faltered, and every time I adjusted my pace, the lights behind me mirrored the change like a reflection. About 3/4 of the way home, the highway dipped into a long, dark stretch where the streetlights were far apart. The night there always felt deeper, like the world narrowed to whatever your headlights touched. On that stretch, the headlights behind me grew brighter, not by much, just enough that it caught my eye, like the car had inched closer without me noticing. The realization made a small shiver run down my spine. I checked the speedometer. I was going just below the limit, nothing unusual. But the car behind me felt too fixed, too steady, like its entire purpose was to follow. I turned on my blinker for an exit I didn't plan to take. As I slowed toward the ramp, the headlights behind me dimmed slightly as the car slowed too. But when I turned sharply onto the exit ramp, something changed. The headlights didn't follow. Instead, they flickered once and then shut off completely. One moment they were right behind me, and the next the road behind was pitch black, swallowed in total darkness. I slowed to a crawl, staring at the mirror, waiting to see the car coast past on the main highway. But nothing appeared, no headlights, no engine sound, just silence. A heavy, unsettling realization moved through me. If the car had missed the exit, I would have seen it pass. If it had stopped on the highway, I would have seen its shape dimly under the distant streetlights. Instead, there was nothing at all, like the car had vanished the instant I left the main road. I pulled to the side, trying to steel my nerves, and waited another minute. Still nothing. I continued home using back roads, feeling the quiet pressing in more tightly than usual. Every reflective sign, every faint glint of light made me check the mirror again. But the night stayed empty, and I didn't see another car until I reached my driveway. In the days afterward, I tried to rationalize what happened. Maybe the driver turned their lights off for some strange reason, or maybe they pulled onto the shoulder without me noticing. But the more I replay it, the less sense it makes. There was no shoulder wide enough to park on and no turnoff before the exit. And even if the driver had managed something reckless, the timing, the instant disappearance, didn't match anything normal. What unsettles me most isn't the car vanishing. It's the way it followed so precisely for so long, mirroring every move like it knew what I would do before I did it. Whenever I drive that highway now, I find myself checking the mirror more often than I want to admit, half expecting to see those same distant headlights appear again. Because the worst part about that night is the question that still lingers every time I'm alone on that road. As if it wasn't another driver following me. Then what was watching me through the rear view? I've always preferred driving back from my parents' house late in the evening. There's something calming about empty roads after most people have already gone home. The soft hum of the engine, the rhythm of passing reflectors, the kind of quiet that lets your thoughts stretch out without interruption. That night was no different. I left just after 10, the sky already sunk into that deep, velvety darkness that only rural highways seem to have. The air outside was cold but gentle, the sort of cold that clears your head. I remember feeling tired in a peaceful way, like the long day behind me had finally worn itself out. The road ahead was open, familiar, and comforting, at least for the first few miles. The first irregularity came so softly I didn't register it right away. I took an exit onto the main highway, and as I merged, I saw a set of headlights appear far behind me. Nothing strange, just another driver heading home late. But a few minutes later, when I took a small detour through a side stretch I rarely used, those same headlights appeared again. At first, I brushed it off. Highways can loop in strange ways, and maybe they had taken a parallel road. But something about the timing made my stomach tighten. They turned into the same lane just a little too quickly for coincidence, like they already knew I'd be there. Still, I reminded myself not to overthink. People take the same exits all the time. The unease didn't truly settle in until I made an unnecessary turn, a last-minute decision to stop at a convenience store just off another exit ramp. I didn't even need anything. I just wanted to see if that car would keep following. When I signaled and slowed down, the headlights behind me also slowed. Not abruptly, not suspiciously, just perfectly. They dipped to the exact same speed, matched the turn signal, and drifted into the exit lane right behind me. My fingers tightened on the steering wheel as I rolled onto the off-ramp, watching those lights follow like they were tethered to me. I tried to convince myself it was normal, but the rhythm of their movement felt too deliberate to ignore. Halfway down the ramp, the road curved to the right. I glanced at my side mirror, and in that single moment of angled reflection, the headlights behind me flickered strangely like they passed behind something tall, even though the ramp was clear and open. For a moment, they looked dimmer, then brighter, as if the car was weaving in and out of shadows that shouldn't have been there. My pulse quickened. The ramp was lit well enough that nothing should have caused such deep patches of darkness. It made no sense. I eased off the gas, and the headlights adjusted instantly, hovering at the same distance like a predator gauging the perfect pace. I reached the end of the ramp and rolled toward the stop sign. The car behind me stopped too, but not at the sign. It stopped much farther back, lingering in the middle of the ramp with its headlights angled low. I waited for the driver to pull forward. They didn't. I could feel the hair on my arms prickling as the silence around me deepened. No engines from cross traffic. No wind. No sound from the car behind me beyond its faint idle. I thought about turning left, then right, but both choices felt exposed. Like whichever direction I went would tell the car something I didn't want them to know. Finally, I took a right and eased gently onto the connecting road. For a few seconds, there was nothing, just the empty street and the glow of my own headlights stretching ahead. Then slowly, the other car rolled forward again. It didn't accelerate immediately. It drifted toward the intersection in this smooth, gliding way that felt wrong, almost like it wasn't being driven but pulled by something unseen. The headlights flickered again as it reached the base of the ramp, dimming as if swallowed by a shadow that had no business being there. I gripped the wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. When the car finally turned onto the same road behind me, I decided I'd had enough. I hit the signal for a gas station ahead, a bright one with wide windows and security lights pouring across the pavement. As I slowed, the other car slowed too, but the flicker of its headlights grew sharper, almost twitchy, like the light was struggling to stay on. That was when my fear changed from anxiety to something colder. I needed to get out of the dark. I swung into the gas station quickly, parked near the windows, and shut off my engine. The attendant inside glanced up but didn't react. It looked like a normal night to him. I watched the road through my mirror, waiting for the car to follow me into the lot. But it didn't. Instead, it coasted to a stop at the very edge of the road, far enough away that no light touched it but close enough that I could see its shape. The headlights dimmed, then brightened again, then dimmed once more steadily, unpredictably. No one opened a door, no engine cut off. Just that flicker pulsing like some slow heartbeat. I tried to make out the driver's face through the windshield, but there was no movement inside. No silhouette, no reflection of a person. And then the lights went off completely. Not gradually, not with that little drop you expect from an old battery. They snapped off instantly, leaving the car a pitch-black outline against the faint shimmer of the horizon. I waited, breath caught in my chest, expecting something to emerge from the darkness, a door opening, a shadow crossing the road. Nothing happened. The car didn't move. The engine made no sound. It sat there like an empty shell. After a few minutes, I decided to go inside the gas station. I pretended to look at snacks I didn't need. Hopping time would make things feel normal again. But when I returned to the window, the road outside was empty. The car was gone. No lights, no sound, no tail lights disappearing down the road, just gone like it had never been there at all. Driving home afterward, every exit sign felt like an omen, and every patch of darkness on the road made me tighten my grip on the wheel. For weeks, I avoided unnecessary turns. I stayed in well-lit lanes. And every time I saw headlights appear behind me, I felt my heartbeat quicken until I knew the car wasn't following. I still take that same route sometimes, but I never look at the exit ramp the same way again, because part of me can't shake the feeling that whatever followed me that night wasn't following the car, it was following me. And some nights when I glance at the mirror at just the wrong moment, I swear I see a flicker behind me, a faint glow dipping in and out of shadows that shouldn't exist. As if the driver who never appeared is still trying to catch up. Route 19 was never a frightening road to me. If anything, it was comforting in its emptiness, a long stretch of highway cutting through thick forest, with no towns for miles and only the occasional billboard breaking the monotony. I used to take it often after visiting a friend who lived deep in the countryside. The drive home was usually quiet, marked only by the hum of my engine and the soft whisper of wind slipping through the cracks of the windows. That night felt like every other long drive. Cold air, an empty coffee cup in the console, and the sense that the world around me had already fallen asleep. I remember thinking how peaceful it was, how calming it felt to be alone on the road with nothing but the dark trees lining both sides. About 20 minutes in, I saw something that nudged my attention just enough to interrupt the rhythm of the drive. A car was pulled over on the shoulder up ahead. No hazards, no headlights, just a faint outline sitting motionless in the dark. At first, I didn't think much of it. People pull over for all sorts of reasons, but something about how still the car looked bothered me. Cars on the shoulder usually show some sign of life, an interior light, tail lights, movement inside. This one looked almost abandoned, swallowed by the shadow of the trees. As I got closer, I felt a strange pressure settle in my chest, like I had suddenly become aware of my own heartbeat. Just as I passed it, the car's engine roared to life, not gradually, not like someone turning a key, but instantly. I checked my mirror and saw the faint reflection of headlights clicking on. They didn't brighten slowly. They flashed to full strength in an instant. The car pulled onto the highway behind me with a smoothness that didn't match the suddenness of the ignition. I tried to wave off the unease. Maybe someone had been asleep. Maybe their battery had cut out and they got it going again. But a tiny voice inside me whispered that the timing was too perfect to ignore. I held a steady pace, but the car behind me didn't overtake or fall back. It hovered at a distance that felt intentional, close enough that I could see the glare of its headlights but far enough that I couldn't make out the shape of the hood or the silhouette of anyone inside. The longer I stayed on that stretch, the more aware I became of its presence. Route 19 is surrounded by thick forest, dense enough that the trees press into the edges of your vision, making the darkness feel deeper than it should. With every mile, the headlights behind me pulsed through my mirrors like an echo, unsettling and rhythmic. I slowed down slightly, just a small drop to see if it would pass. The car slowed too precisely, instantly, as if it had anticipated me. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. I sped up a little and it matched that too. I wasn't imagining it. Whoever was behind me was deliberately maintaining the exact same distance. No wobbling between speeds, no lag, just perfect, unsettling synchronization. The air inside my car felt colder, and I reached out to turn off the radio so I could focus. The silence made everything louder, the faint hum of my engine, the wind brushing the side of the car, the low buzz of adrenaline settling into my bones. I decided to test it again. Route 19 splits into a passing lane for a short stretch, a straight, clear section where faster drivers usually zoom past. I moved slowly toward the right lane, giving the car behind me lots of space to pass. It didn't change lanes, it didn't adjust position. It stayed behind me like it had nowhere else in the world to be. By now, my heartbeat had worked its way halfway into my throat. I reminded myself that not every coincidence is sinister, but the human brain has a way of sensing intent long before logic catches up. Whatever was behind me wasn't acting like a normal driver. When we entered the long, dark portion of Route 19, the one where the streetlights disappear entirely for a few miles, the headlights behind me changed. They dimmed, not like someone manually lowered them, they flickered. The left one first, then the right, then both together in an uneven pulse that made the darkness feel suffocating. The flicker wasn't from bumps in the road, the asphalt there is smooth and well paved. It almost looked like the lights were struggling to stay on. I had the sudden, unnerving thought that maybe the car wasn't following me. Maybe the lights were reacting to something else entirely. I tried to breathe through the fear but found myself tensing at every reflection. At one point, maybe a minute, maybe 30 seconds, I glanced at my mirror and realized I couldn't see a driver's silhouette. The glare from the headlights hid most of the cabin, but usually you can make out some impression of a shape behind the wheel. I saw nothing, not emptiness exactly, but blankness, like the space wasn't lit at all, like the lights didn't reach inside the car. When the rest stop finally appeared, a tiny gravel pull-off with a single vending machine and one dim lamp, I made a quick decision. I swerved off the road, pulling into the space fast enough that dust kicked up behind me. If the car was following me, I wanted to see what it would do without the forward momentum of the drive forcing its hand. The headlights behind me slowed from a distance, then approached. I braced myself, heart pounding, waiting for it to turn in. But it didn't. Instead, it rolled to a stop directly across the rest stop entrance. No turn signal, no lane change, just a smooth, silent glide to a halt. We sat in silence, me and the gravel lot, them on the highway. No door opened, no engine sound changed. The car stayed in place like a statue lit by its own failing headlights. I watched those lights flicker once, twice, then both went out. Darkness swallowed the car instantly, leaving nothing but a faint outline against the trees. I waited, frozen, barely breathing. A semi-truck roared past a few seconds later, shaking my car with its wake. When it passed, the shoulder where the car had been sitting was empty. Empty. I scanned the road repeatedly. Nothing, no tail lights fatting down the highway, no engine pulling away, no sound of gravel shifting, just silence and the growing dread building inside me. I stayed at the rest stop for a long time, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. When I finally drove home, I kept checking every mirror, half expecting those flickering headlights to appear again from the patches of darkness behind me. For weeks afterward, I avoided Route 19 entirely. But no matter which road I took, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched in my rearview mirror. Even now, when I'm alone on a dark highway, I find myself glancing back too quickly, afraid I'll see headlights packing me again, matching my speed, mirroring my movements, knowing exactly how far to stay. It's because somewhere deep inside the quiet part of my mind, I'm still not sure the car that followed me on Route 19 was ever really a driver at all. I've spent a good part of my adult life driving at night, not for fun, just out of necessity. For years, my job had me traveling between small towns, dropping off equipment in the evenings and heading home long after most people had gone to sleep. I got used to the empty highways and the steady drone of tires on asphalt. They became part of my routine, almost comforting in their predictability. The long stretches of road where nothing changed except the curve of the earth felt calming after a day spent talking to people. I'd settle into the quiet, sip lukewarm coffee, and let the lines on the pavement guide me home. I never imagined anything could break that rhythm. The night it happened, the road was especially still. It was one of those perfectly cold evenings where the air feels sharp and the sky looks almost metallic. I remember seeing only two cars the entire first hour of my drive. Everything felt peaceful enough that I rolled down my window an inch, letting the cold slip across my knuckles on the steering wheel. I wasn't tired, just eager to get home. It wasn't until I reached a long, sweeping bend in the highway that something behind me caught my eye, faint headlights cresting a hill far in the distance. Nothing unusual, just another driver heading toward whatever destination meant something to them. But a few minutes later, the headlights began closing the gap in a way that didn't feel entirely natural. Not fast, not aggressive, just steady, too steady. Most vehicles speed up or slow down a little. They wobble in speed. They vary, but these lights advanced with a strange sort of patience, keeping a perfect rhythm against the dark horizon. When they finally approached close enough for me to make out their shape, I realized it wasn't a car behind me at all. It was a semi-truck, a big one. But something about it looked off. The truck had no markings, no company logo, no numbers, no reflective tape along the sides. Even the cabin looked blank, almost unfinished, as if someone had sanded off all identifying features and painted it in a shade of dull industrial gray. I tried to rationalize it, maybe it was being repainted or sold, but even unmarked trucks have safety markings, reflective strips, something. This one didn't. It looked more like a shadow masquerading as a truck, a huge block of darkness with headlights slapped onto the front. It trailed behind me for a while, matching my speed, staying just far enough back that I couldn't see into the cabin. I told myself it was coincidence. Maybe the driver was zoning out, maybe they were just keeping a safe distance. But then the high beams flashed once briefly, then settled into a steady glare that washed my mirrors in hard white light. The timing made no sense. There was nothing on the road to warn me about, nothing ahead but empty asphalt and wooden guardrails. I slowed down a little, hoping the truck would take the hint and pass. It didn't, it slowed too perfectly. The headlights stayed locked on my rear window like they were fixed in place. A thin tension began to curl through my chest, and I started paying attention to every sound: the hum of my engine, the faint rattle of something in my glove compartment, the subtle pressure of the gas pedal under my foot. The normal noises suddenly felt amplified, like the silence around them had thickened. When the road widened into a two-lane stretch, I moved into the right lane again, practically inviting the truck to go around me. For a moment, nothing changed. Then the truck slid into the left lane, slowly, smoothly. I felt relief building until it stayed exactly beside me instead of passing. I glanced over, heart thudding, and saw nothing through the tinted window, not a silhouette, not movement, not even the faint shape of a head behind the glass. It was as if the cabin was completely empty. I tried not to stare, but my pulse hammered so hard I felt it in my throat. The truck remained there, packing me at the exact same speed, our vehicles moving in perfect parallel lines. The highway curved slightly, and I instinctively eased off the gas to adjust. The truck adjusted too, mirroring my speed down to the smallest variation. It was impossible to ignore now. This wasn't just weird driving. It was intentional. Then something strange happened. The truck moved back behind me again in another impossibly smooth shift of lanes. No sway, no hesitation, just a deliberate repositioning that made my skin crawl. The headlights brightened not like someone pressing a switch, but like the truck leaned forward, breathing down my neck. That's the only way I can describe it. It felt alive in a way machinery shouldn't. My exit was still miles away, and I didn't want this thing following me into town. I decided to try something unpredictable. A mile ahead, there was a small rural exit. Most people didn't use, a narrow ramp leading to a dusty service road. At the last second, I flicked my turn signal on and veered toward the exit. The truck reacted immediately, not like a driver caught off guard, not like someone making a split-second decision. It reacted exactly as if it had known I was going to turn. It followed me. I felt cold panic bloom under my ribs. The exit ramp curved sharply to the right, and my headlights skimmed across the barren field beside it, the shadows stretching long and thin. The truck stayed right behind me, its beams washing the road in blinding white. I drove faster than I should have, desperate now to lose it. But when I reached the bottom of the ramp, something changed, something I still can't explain. Well, the truck stopped. Not because I braked or blocked it. It stopped perfectly at the top of the ramp, engine humming low, headlights pointed straight down the highway, as if it couldn't come down, as if something kept it from crossing whatever invisible line separated the highway from the service road. I watched in my mirror, breath trembling as it idled there, engine rumbling like a distant growl, but making no move to continue. Then its headlights went dark. Not slowly, instantly. A blink and they were gone. The silhouette of the truck remained for a moment, a black hulking shape against the faint glow of the night sky, and then even that shape faded, as if the darkness behind it had swallowed it whole. I didn't wait. I sped down the service road and didn't look back again until I reached a well-lit intersection 5 miles later. The highway above me remained empty, silent, untouched by anything. I've never seen an unmarked truck like that since. Every night I drove afterward, I checked my mirrors too often, scanning for headlights that stayed a little too steady or a silhouette that didn't move quite right. But the worst part wasn't the truck itself. It was the feeling I had as I drove away, a quiet, unshakable certainty that whatever was behind that windshield hadn't been human. And sometimes, on certain nights when the roads are especially empty, I swear I can feel that same tight, focused attention settle on me again, like something out there is still matching its speed to mine, waiting for the moment I drift too far into the dark. I was driving home after a weekend trip, one of those quiet Sunday nights when the world feels like it's already preparing for Monday. The highway was almost empty, the sky overcast in that heavy, muted way that swallows the stars. My bags were in the backseat, a half-finished bottle of water in the cup holder, and the soft hum of the audiobook I wasn't really listening to filled the car. I felt relaxed, the kind of tired that settles gently rather than weighing you down. As the road stretched ahead, wide and predictable, with only the occasional streetlight breaking up the dark. I didn't know then that it would be the last time I ever felt comfortable driving alone at night. The first odd moment happened near the rest stop outside Brookville. I pulled off to stretch my legs and check my messages before the last hour of driving. There was a single sedan parked near the vending machines, small, dark, nothing remarkable. I barely paid attention to it. I got back into my car, clicked my seatbelt, and pulled away, my headlights cutting across the empty lot. As I got back on the highway, I noticed the sedan pull out a few seconds later. Again, completely normal. But something about the timing made me glance into the mirror longer than I should have. It felt like the car had been waiting. For the next several miles, the sedan stayed behind me. Not close enough to tailgate, not far enough to dismiss, just steady. I told myself I was being paranoid. People leave rest stops all the time, but every time I switched lanes, it did too, always a beat after me, like someone trying to mimic a pattern without making it obvious. I changed lanes again. So did the sedan. A small pinch of unease settled low in my stomach. Maybe the driver had cruise control on. Maybe they were tired too. But then I took a random exit, one I didn't need, just to see what would happen. The sedan followed. I felt my heartbeat pull tight in my chest. The exit curved into a quiet country road with no businesses, just tall grass swaying on either side. I slowed as I reached the first intersection, waiting to see which way they'd go. The sedan idled behind me, keeping the same distance, engine humming faintly through my open window. I turned left. After a full second, not immediate, not delayed, the sedan turned left too, drifting into the lane like it had been rehearsed. Back on the rural stretch, the road was empty enough that I could catch glimpses of the car behind me whenever a reflective sign flashed. That was when I saw it for the first time. The sedan had no front plate. The area doesn't legally require one, but the empty bracket made it look unfinished, like something was missing. And through the windshield, I didn't see movement. Most drivers shift their weight, adjust their hands, nod along to music. But this silhouette stayed perfectly still. Too still. My fingers tightened around the wheel without meaning to. I decided then to take a longer detour. If it was coincidence, the car would eventually break off. The next series of turns were sharp and unpredictable, not the kind any normal driver would mirror. I turned right onto a narrow road. The sedan followed. I took the next left, so did the sedan. I sped up to 70. It stayed exactly the same distance behind me, not gaining, not falling back. By the time I reached a four-way stop, my hands were trembling just enough for me to notice. The sedan rolled to a complete stop behind me, headlights low, silent, waiting. I couldn't see the driver. I couldn't even see the hint of a headrest moving. My mind raced for explanations. Maybe they were going to the same town, maybe someone was lost, maybe I wasn't thinking clearly. But none of those explanations accounted for the way the car mirrored every move with unnerving precision. When the road ahead split into two lanes, I took the one leading toward the toll plaza, a bright, open area with cameras and attendants. If the sedan followed me there, it would have to interact with someone. I kept reminding myself that the lights, the people, the structure would make me feel safe again. As I approached the toll area, the plaza glowed with a warm wash of sodium light, bright enough to make the night feel thin. I felt a small wash of relief, but the sedan slowed, not normally, not cautiously. It slowed as if resisting something, drifting like a car coasting without anyone steering. I pulled into a lane, the sedan veered into the far lane, still matching my speed. I paid the toll quickly, hands shaking more now. Through the booth window, I saw the attendant glance toward the other lane. His face shifted, not scared, but confused, as he leaned forward slightly to see better. The sedan didn't stop. It didn't pay. It didn't approach the booth at all. It rolled to a halt several feet before reaching the window, headlights facing forward, unmoving like it wasn't capable of going any further. The attendant called out, probably asking if the driver was okay, but no one answered. No door opened. No window rolled down. The silhouette inside stayed still, and I realized with a cold ripple through my chest that I couldn't even see the outline of a person now. Just a dark shape swallowed by deeper darkness. I pulled forward into the lit parking area on the right, watching the stalled sedan from a distance. The toll attendant stepped out of his booth, only for the sedan to suddenly shift. Not forward, not backward, it simply reversed, silently, smoothly. It drifted backward down the lane, all the way through the toll gate it hadn't paid for, and then rolled into the dark highway beyond the lights, disappearing as though the night had absorbed it. I sat there for a long time, breathing in small, unsteady pulls, waiting to see if it would return. It never did. The drive home afterward felt unfamiliar, like every reflective sign was a warning and every shadow beside the road held something waiting. Even now, I can't shake the image of that unmoving silhouette, or the way the car matched every turn with such deliberate intent. Sometimes when I'm driving alone at night and a car pulls out behind me, I feel a cold prickle along my spine until I'm absolutely sure it's not the same one. Because the part that still unsettles me most isn't that the sedan followed me. It's that it stopped exactly where a human driver should have stepped out. And no one ever did. I've always felt safer when I see a police cruiser on the highway at night. Something about those steady lights and the familiar shape of the car makes the road feel watched, as if someone responsible is nearby. I used to take comfort in that during late drives home from my night shift. The route I took ran along a wide stretch of highway with long gaps between towns, and for most people it was an uneventful drive. For me, the quiet was usually soothing. The streetlights thinning out, the engine humming softly, the dark pressing against the windows, it all felt strangely peaceful. But one night erased that sense of comfort completely. It had been a long shift, and my mind felt slow in that heavy, foggy way that creeps in when you're overtired but trying to push through. The air was cool enough that I cracked the window to stay alert, letting the wind slip across my face. That's when I first noticed the faint glow of blue and red lights in my rearview mirror, distant at first, just a small flicker on the horizon. I felt a tiny hint of relief. A patrol car. Good. The road felt a little safer instantly. I didn't think much of it at the time. I just kept driving, expecting the cruiser to pass me and move on. But it didn't pass. It stayed behind me at the exact same distance, steady, quiet, perfectly centered in the rearview mirror. I assumed the officer was packing traffic, maybe monitoring speed. I wasn't doing anything wrong and I hadn't deviated from my lane, but something about how still the lights looked unsettled me. Police lights usually rotate or flash or strobe. These glowed in a soft, constant pulse. They didn't blink. They didn't change intensity. They just hovered there as if frozen. A subtle pinch of unease tightened in my chest. I checked my speed. I was going slightly under the limit. I signaled and changed lanes. The cruiser moved into the same lane the moment I did without hesitation or lag. My pulse ticked up a little. I slowed down even more, just enough to make it uncomfortable for anyone following too closely. The cruiser slowed too, mirroring my exact speed, matching me perfectly down to the mile per hour. That's when the first real doubt crept in. No patrol car behaves like that. They either pass or pull you over. They don't just sit behind you like a shadow. The road curved, and for a moment the cruiser disappeared behind the bend. I expected it to appear in my mirror at a slightly different angle, but when it came back into view, something felt wrong. I couldn't see the reflective decals that patrol cars have on their sides. No seals, no numbers, no markings at all. The shape looked right, but the body seemed blank, empty. The blue and red glow came from the right spot on the roof, but I realized I wasn't seeing actual lights. I was seeing something softly glowing, like illumination through tinted glass. Trying to get a better look, I drifted toward the left lane again. The cruiser followed. When I sped up slightly, it matched the speed instantly. No delay, no human reaction time, just perfect mirroring. The unease in my stomach had grown into something sharper now, like a cold pressure settling beneath my ribs. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me too closely, studying me. I decided to test it further. The next exit was about a mile ahead, a long ramp leading into a quiet farm town. I signaled early, hoping the cruiser would stay on the main highway. But when I drifted toward the exit lane, the cruiser followed smoothly, barely shifting its lights. My pulse quickened. The ramp dropped into darkness, lined with trees that rose tall on either side like silent sentries. I slowed at the end of the ramp, preparing to turn right. The cruiser stopped behind me, not close enough to tailgate, but close enough that I could feel its presence like a weight on my back. This is the part that still chills me. A real patrol officer would have walked up by now, or flashed their lights brighter, or signaled for me to pull over. Instead, the car behind me idled silently without a single flash of its supposed beacons. I decided not to stop. I turned right, heart pounding, and the cruiser followed again, slow, steady, impossibly precise. The stretch of road was narrow, with no streetlights for a long distance. As I drove, the cruiser's glow flickered slightly when the trees blocked part of the road, as if the light wasn't coming from actual bulbs but from something softer, more diffused. Whenever I glanced at my mirror, I could see the faint outline of the car but never the driver. No silhouette, no head shape, no movement in the cabin at all. It was like the interior was empty. At this point, the fear had tightened every muscle in my body. I knew I couldn't keep driving down this isolated road with whatever that thing was behind me. I needed light, I needed people, I needed someone else to see this. A small gas station sat at the intersection ahead, bright and open, with cars parked outside and a lit storefront. I pulled in quickly, parking close to the windows. The cruiser rolled into the lot too, but not beside me, not near me. It stopped at the far end, half in shadow, half washed in pale light. I held my breath, watching closely, waiting for a door to open. Oh, nothing. No engine sound changed. No figure stepped out. The glowing lights on the roof dimmed slowly, shrinking like embers cooling. And then, without any motion, the lights simply went out, not switched off, not flickered out, they just died. The car became a dark shape, still and silent. The gas station door opened behind me and a man stepped out, glancing toward the lot. He looked confused. "Everything okay?" he asked. When I pointed toward the cruiser, he squinted and said, "What cruiser? You mean that old car?" I turned fully, breath catching. Oh, he was right. Under the gas station lights, the car wasn't a patrol cruiser at all. It was an old, beaten sedan, paint peeling, no lights on the roof, no markings, no shining headlights, just a dead, silent vehicle. No glow, no shape, nothing indicating law enforcement. And yet, seconds earlier, I'd watched it follow me like something alive. So I didn't stay long after that. I took the long route home, too afraid to get back on the highway. My hands were cold and trembling the entire way. I kept checking my mirrors, but nothing appeared behind me again. Even now, whenever I see patrol lights flickering in the distance, a cold knot forms in my stomach. Because I can't shake the memory of those lights that followed too perfectly, too quietly, and the car that transformed under the gas station glow into something empty, abandoned, and completely wrong. And sometimes, late at night, when the road grows especially quiet, I still catch faint flickers of red and blue in the rearview mirror, not bright enough to be police lights, not steady enough to be reflections. Just enough to remind me that something out there once wore the shape of safety and followed me home. I used to think I was pretty comfortable driving at night. Long trips never bothered me, and even the quietest highways felt peaceful when the world had settled down and the road stretched open ahead of me. I'd often drive home after spending evenings with friends, letting the dark sky and soft hum of the engine help me unwind. For the most part, those drives were uneventful. The kind of nights where nothing stands out except the glow of the dashboard and the occasional flicker of headlights from a passing car. But all it takes is one night, one moment, for a familiar routine to turn into something you never want to repeat again. The night it started, I had just dropped a friend off after a late dinner. It was past midnight and the roads were empty enough that I could go several minutes without seeing a single car. The air was colder than usual, the kind that settles into your jacket and makes the steering wheel feel slicker beneath your grip. I remember rolling down my window just a bit to keep myself awake. That's when the first set of headlights appeared behind me far back, barely more than two tiny white dots at first. Nothing unusual. I didn't pay attention. But they caught up faster than I expected, closing the distance in a strangely smooth way, almost like the car wasn't accelerating but simply gliding forward effortlessly. When the headlights settled behind me, matching my speed perfectly, I felt a small flicker of unease. Not fear exactly, just that slight prickling feeling you get when something seems off. I changed lanes casually. The car behind me did the same, drifting into place without hesitation. I tried to tell myself it was coincidence, but the timing was too exact. I sped up a little. The car matched it. I slowed down, so did it. My chest tightened just slightly as I watched it keep the same distance behind me no matter what I did. After a few miles, I took an exit earlier than necessary, planning to loop back around. I didn't want to go home with a stranger glued to my bumper. The exit ramp curved sharply, and for a moment the car behind me dipped out of view. When I reached the bottom of the ramp and turned left, I caught sight of those headlights again. They appeared at the top of the ramp like they had been waiting for me, pausing before sliding down with the same steady pace. At this point, I told myself I needed to be smart. I couldn't just assume coincidence anymore. I turned again at the next intersection, then again, making a series of unnecessary turns designed to shake off anyone who might be following me. The car followed each one, always a beat behind, always calm, always certain. I felt the tension creeping up my spine, settling into my shoulders. My hands had begun to sweat against the steering wheel. As I kept glancing into the mirror, hopping the car would make a mistake, drift too close, speed up too fast, anything that felt human. But it didn't. It remained perfectly steady. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, it vanished. 1 second it was behind me. The next, I glanced at the mirror and the road was empty. No headlights, no engine sound, just darkness stretching behind me. My heart hammered in my chest. I slowed, checking again, nothing. I pulled onto the shoulder under a street lamp and looked out the rear window, still nothing. The road was silent and a thin breeze moved across the pavement. I sat there for a moment, trying to calm my breathing. Maybe the car had turned off. Maybe I hadn't noticed a driveway or small side road. Anything was possible. But the feeling didn't leave. It lingered like a weight between my shoulder blades. I got back on the highway, forcing myself to focus on the road ahead. For a few minutes, things felt normal again. The lights of the next town appeared in the distance, and I convinced myself the whole situation was just a misunderstanding mixed with late-night paranoia. Then the headlights appeared again. Not behind me, beside me. They flashed into view in the right lane like the car had materialized from the dark. I jerked the wheel slightly, startled, but the car held its position in the other lane. My breath caught. I hadn't heard an engine. I hadn't seen it approaching. It had just returned. I tried to look into the cabin, but the windows were tinted so dark they reflected the faint glow of my own headlights instead of revealing anything inside. The car drifted a little closer, then held steady, not passing. Not falling back, just keeping perfect pace. My heartbeat was sharp in my ears. I couldn't understand how it got there. I had been watching the mirrors obsessively. Nothing had been behind me, but now here it was, gliding beside me like it had always been there. My fingers trembled as I tightened my grip on the wheel. I knew I needed to get somewhere safe. The next gas station was a few miles ahead, lit like a beacon against the dark. I sped up, and for the first time the other car didn't match my speed instantly. It hovered, then fell behind just enough to slip back into my blind spot. That made the fear worse. Not seeing it was infinitely more unsettling than seeing it. When I finally pulled into the gas station, my hands were shaking so badly I nearly hit the curb. The bright lights felt like a relief, almost warm against the cold night. I looked around desperately for the car. It wasn't beside me, it wasn't behind me. But then out of the corner of my eye, I saw it parked at the far edge of the lot, headlights off, angled directly toward me like it had been waiting. My stomach dropped. I locked my doors without thinking. The car didn't move. It didn't even look like it had been driven. No lingering engine sound, no slight rock from the movement of the vehicle. Just stillness. I stayed inside my car, pretending to check my phone, pretending I wasn't terrified. After several minutes, a truck entered the lot and parked near the pumps. For some reason, that moment of distraction broke my line of sight with the sedan just for a heartbeat. When I looked back, the car was gone. The space where it had been sitting was empty, no tail lights moving away, no sound, no trace of it leaving. As I drove home after that slowly, carefully, with every mirror adjusted, checking constantly. Nothing followed me, nothing appeared on the road. When I got into my driveway, I sat for a moment, breathing deeply, hands trembling uncontrollably. I told myself it was over. But it was. 3 nights later, I was on a completely different road, nowhere near the highway where it happened. And as I pulled onto the main stretch, I saw a familiar pair of headlights appear behind me in the same, unsettling way, distant at first, then closing the gap with that same smooth glide. As it matched my turns, it mirrored my speed. As it returned. I don't know what that car wanted or why it keeps finding me. But every time I drive at night now, I feel the same cold dread creeping up the back of my neck. Because the worst part isn't that it followed me once. It's that it keeps coming back. And it always finds me right when I think I've forgotten it. Night driving has a way of exposing the quiet parts of the world, the stretches of road where silence feels heavier, where headlights become the only sign of life, and where fear doesn't arrive with a scream but with a slow realization that you are no longer alone. These stories remind us that danger doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it drifts along behind us, matching our pace, waiting for the moment when our guard drops in the dark. The highway looks endless at night, but the shadows beside it are much closer than they seem. And if you've ever felt that uneasy pull to check your rearview mirror twice, or caught yourself listening for a sound you can't quite name, you understand the people in these stories more than you think. Night brings out a different kind of truth, the one we hear when the world is quiet, when our hearts beat just a little too loud, and when instinct whispers warnings our minds try to ignore. You're not strange for feeling it, you're human. We all sense things in the dark long before we are willing to say them out loud. If tonight's stories kept you company, you're welcome to stay a little longer, to subscribe or return whenever the road feels too empty or the quiet feels too deep. There will always be another night, another tale whispered low enough to blend into the darkness around you. For now, let the engines settle, let your breath slow, and let the world grow soft again. And when you finally step away from the glow of your screen, remember, most headlights you see on the highway belong to ordinary drivers heading home. But every so often, in the stillness of the late hours, one pair moves a little too perfectly. One presence lingers a little too long. So tonight, drive safely and try not to think too much about what might be following just out of sight.